Donald Trump just threatened NATO on live TV, but what Jimmy Kimmel revealed next shocked even his own audience. Was it a bold move or a reckless mistake? Could a talk show stage handle that kind of fire? Why would Kimmel risk it all for one question? The Los Angeles studio of Jimmy Kimmel Live buzzed with energy. The crowd hyped for Trump's rare appearance, a booking that took months to lock down. His team wanted softball chats, but Kimmel's writers had other plans. Their edge, sharp. Trump walked out, suit sharp, waving through cheers and some boos, his grin unshaken. Kimmel kicked off with light jabs, poking at Trump's latest rally, where he'd blasted NATO, calling allies deadbeats, hinting he'd ditch them. The crowd chuckled. Trump nodded, playing nice, but Kimmel's smirk hinted at more. He tossed out a question about the rally, expecting a dodge, but Trump leaned in, doubling down, his voice loud, the room stirring. Some clapped, others shifted. Was Kimmel ready for this, or did he misread his guest? He pivoted fast, bringing up Trump's new hotel deal tied to a sketchy overseas investor, rumors floating online. Kimmel's tone got sharp, his jokes hinting at dirt, the laughs fading. Trump's eyes narrowed, his fingers tapping, the mood tightening. Kimmel pushed harder, tying it to NATO, asking about trust, not just globally, but personally. The question, cut deep, too real for late night. Did he want a laugh or a fight? The audience leaned in, split, some loving the heat, others uneasy. Trump's smile vanished, his posture stiff. Kimmel's grin fading too. The crew swapped looks, cameras zooming, the stage electric. A producer muttered about time, but Kimmel ignored it, circling back to NATO, his jab about loyalty landing hard. The crowd's applause broke uneven, the line between comedy and clash gone. Trump's glare locked in, the night ready to tip, Kimmel's stage a spark waiting to ignite. The studio lights burned hot as Trump's gaze hardened, Kimmel's last jab about loyalty landing like a spark on dry grass. The audience held its breath, sensing the shift from banter to something raw. Kimmel pushed forward, his voice steady, but sharp, bringing up Trump's rally again, the NATO threats, asking if he meant to scare allies or just rile up his base. Trump didn't flinch, firing back with a defense of his stance, his tone loud, commanding, the crowd splitting, half cheering, half murmuring. Kimmel smirked, tossing in a quip about global trust, but it fell flat, the room too tense for laughs. Trump leaned forward, cutting him off, his words biting, accusing Kimmel of twisting his point for ratings. The host blinked, caught off guard, but doubled down, asking about the hotel deal again, suggesting shady ties, his eyes locked on Trump's. The former president's face reddened, his hand slicing the air, dismissing the question as fake news. The crowd gasping, some clapping, the divide stark. Why was Kimmel digging so deep? Did he want a fight, or was he blind to the edge they were on? The producer signaled for a break, but Kimmel waved it off, his grin gone, replaced by a glint of defiance. He shifted gears, bringing up Trump's campaign trail, a recent speech where he'd mocked a rival's family, a low blow that had sparked headlines. Kimmel pressed, asking if personal attacks were his strategy now, his tone less playful, more accusing. Trump's jaw tightened, his voice dropping, warning Kimmel to stick to comedy, not lectures. The audience stirred, sensing blood, the stage a tightrope snapping under their weight. A heckler shouted from the back, pro-Trump yelling Kimmel was biased, breaking the rhythm. Trump seized it, pointing to the voice, saying that's what real people thought, not Hollywood elites. Kimmel's face twitched, his control slipping. But he shot back, asking if Trump spoke for everyone or just the loudest. The crowd roared, split down the middle, the argument spiraling, no commercial break in sight. Trump's next move loomed, his temper flaring, the night cracking open. Kimmel's stage no longer his own. The heckler's shout still echoed. Trump's finger pointed to the crowd, his claim to speak for real people landing like a jab. Kimmel's jaw tightened, his stage slipping out of control, but he leaned forward, eyes locked on Trump, refusing to back off. He tossed out another question, this time about the former president's social media rants, the ones targeting allies, judges, even late-night hosts. The crowd murmured, sensing the dig, a few laughing, others bracing for impact. Trump's face darkened, his hand waving off the question, dismissing it as noise. But his voice carried an edge, sharp warning. Kimmel didn't stop, his tone colder now, asking if Trump ever regretted a post, ever thought about the damage. The question hung heavy, the audience quiet, waiting. Trump shifted, his posture rigid, then fired back, accusing Kimmel of preaching, not joking, his words slicing through the studio's buzz. The crowd split again, cheers clashing with groans, the divide raw. Kimmel's smirk flickered, his plan to keep it light unraveling, the fight he'd baited now too real. A producer signaled again, desperate for a commercial, but Kimmel ignored. Her doubling down, bringing up Trump's NATO stance once more, tying it to chaos, not strength. He suggested it scared people, not just allies but Americans, his voice steady, almost daring Trump to snap. The former president's eyes flashed, his temper flaring, and he cut in, his tone venomous, telling Kimmel he didn't get it. Never. Wood stuck in his bubble. The crowd gasped, some clapping, the heat spiking, the stage a battlefield. Then Trump turned it personal, his voice dropping, saying Kimmel's show thrived on tearing him down, but he'd never break. The host froze, the barb hitting hard, his face betraying a flicker of doubt. The audience sensed it, their noise dipping, the power shifting. Trump leaned back, smug, knowing he'd landed a blow. Kimmel's hand gripped the desk, his next move. Critical, the night teetering. The clash no longer a game, Trump's edge cutting deeper than anyone expected. Kimmel's fingers dug into the desk, Trump's words still stinging. The accusation that his show fed off tearing him down hanging heavy. The crowd stayed tense, their earlier cheers fading, sensing the host's stumble. Trump sat back, his smirk faint but sharp, eyes locked on Kimmel, daring him to swing again. The studio felt smaller, the lights hotter, the audience caught between thrill and unease, waiting for Kimmel to reclaim his stage. He took a breath, his face hardening, and leaned in, ready to fire back, his instinct to fight overriding caution. He pivoted, bringing up Trump's campaign promises, the ones about unity, asking if tearing into allies like NATO fit that vision. His voice stayed calm, but the edge was clear, a challenge wrapped in a question. Trump didn't blink. His response, quick, saying unity meant strength, not coddling weak links, his tone loud, defiant. The crowd stirred, some nodding, others shifting, the divide sharpening. Kimmel pressed harder, suggesting Trump's words pushed people apart, not together. His gaze unflinching, the jab meant to draw blood. Trump's temper flared, his hand slamming the armrest, accusing Kimmel of spinning lies, same as the media he claimed to mock. The crowd gasped, the outburst raw, a few cheering, most stunned. Kimmel didn't flinch, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise, the fight slipping further from his control. He tried pivoting, tossing out a lighter question about Trump's golf game, hoping to cool things, but Trump ignored it, circling back to the host's bias, saying he'd never give a fair shake. The audience murmured, the mood electric, Kimmel's grip on the night fraying fast. Then it snapped. Trump leaned forward, his voice low, biting, telling Kimmel he was nothing without his desk, just a guy throwing stones from a glass house. The crowd froze, the insult landing like a slap. Kimmel's face reddening, his silence deafening. The producer signaled wildly, but the cameras stayed rolling, capturing every second. Kimmel's hand twitched, his comeback forming, but the weight of Trump's words lingered. The stage no longer his, the clash tilting toward chaos, the night spiraling into uncharted territory. The studio hung in a tense hush, Trump's jab still echoing, Kimmel's face flushed, his silence a crack in his usual armor. The crowd waited, eyes darting between host and guest, the air thick with anticipation, some craving more heat, others uneasy at the rawness. Trump leaned back, his expression smug, knowing he'd hit a nerve, his confidence filling the space Kimmel's pause left empty. The producer's signal flashed again, urging a break, but Kimmel ignored it, his jaw set, determined to claw back. Control, his stage slipping away. He leaned forward, voice low, asking Trump if insults were all he had left. No answers, just attacks. The question stung, meant to flip the script, and the crowd murmured, a few clapping, sensing a comeback. Trump's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing, and he fired back, saying Kimmel didn't want answers, only headlines. his tone sharp, accusing. The exchange crackled, each man digging in, the audience splitting louder, cheers clashing with boos, the divide a mirror of the night's chaos. Kimmel pushed harder, circling back to Nato, asking if Trump's threats were just bluster or a real plan to ditch allies. His voice rose, less polished, more desperate. The comedian gone, replaced by a man fighting to hold ground. Trump didn't hesitate, his response booming, defending his stance as tough love, saying weak alliances hurt more than help. The crowd roared, some pumped, others shaken, Kimmel's question backfiring, Trump's energy swallowing the room, his grip tightening. Then Kimmel slipped, his frustration boiling over, saying Trump's style was all noise, no substance, a jab too blunt, too personal. The crowd gasped, the line crossed, and Trump pounced, his voice icy, telling Kimmel he'd never understand. Winning, not from a cheap seat like his. The insult landed harder than before, Kimmel's face twitching, the audience stunned, a few laughing nervously, others silent. The stage tilted fully to Trump, Kimmel's fight faltering, the night AE. Runaway train. The clash exposing cracks neither man could hide. Kimmel's eyes flashed, Trump's latest insult cutting deeper, the cheap seat jab a blade to his pride. The crowd stayed locked in, their earlier split now a tense hush, sensing the host's struggle, the stage no longer his playground. Trump sat tall, his gaze steady, relishing the moment, his control over the room almost total. Kimmel's hand gripped the desk, his breath short, fighting to find a way back, knowing the cameras caught every flinch, the night a test he hadn't prepped for. He tried pivoting, asking about Trump's plans post-election, a softer toss, hoping to reset. His voice strained, the edge still there, betraying his rattled core. Trump brushed it off, circling back to Kimmel's dig, saying he'd never get what it took to lead, too busy mocking from the sidelines. The crowd stirred, some cheering Trump's fire, others shifting, uncomfortable, the divide rawer than ever. Kimmel's face tightened, his comeback forming, but Trump kept pushing, accusing him of playing judge, not host, his tone dripping disdain. The tension snapped when Kimmel fired back, his voice loud, saying Trump's leadership was just chaos, dressed up as strength. The crowd gasped, the jab reckless, personal, and Trump's temper flared, his hand slicing the air, telling Kimmel he was out of his league, a nobody without his writers. The words hit like a punch, the audience frozen, a few clapping, most stunned, the insult cruel, final. Kimmel's smirk vanished, his silence deafening, the stage a battlefield where he'd lost ground fast. A producer rushed the booth, signaling to cut to commercial. But Kimmel shook his head, stubborn, refusing to let Trump have the last word. He leaned in, asking one last time about Nato, his voice shaking, demanding if Trump cared about the fallout, the fear he'd sparked. Trump's eyes gleamed, sensing weakness, and he stood, towering, saying Kimmel's questions didn't matter, never would, because he answered to bigger rooms. The crowd erupted, split down the middle, Kimmel's fight, crumbling the night a wreck, Trump's shadow swallowing the stage whole. Trump's words hung heavy, his claim to answer to bigger rooms a gut punch that left Kimmel slumped, the crowd's roar fading into a tense buzz. The former president stood, his presence dominating, ready to walk, his point made, his victory clear. Kimmel's face burned, the sting of being called a nobody searing, his stage a battleground he'd lost. The audience watched, split still, some hyped by Trump's fire, others uneasy, sensing the host's defeat, the night a mess of raw nerves. Kimmel gripped the desk, forcing a breath, his instinct kicking in, refusing to let it end like this. He stood too, matching Trump's height, his voice hoarse but steady, asking if walking away was all Trump could do when pressed. The question landed soft, almost pleading, but it stopped Trump mid-step, his head turning, eyes narrowing. The crowd leaned in, sensing a shift, a spark of fight left in Kimmel, the cameras zooming, the producer frozen, break forgotten. Trump turned back, his smirk faint, saying nothing, just staring, letting Kimmel's question hang, the silence worse than any jab. Then he spoke, low, brutal, telling Kimmel his show was a blip, forgotten by morning, while he shaped history. The crowd gasped, The cruelty sharp, a few cheering, most stunned, Kimmel's face twitching. The blow personal, final. He sat deflated, but something flickered, a glint of resolve, his hand steadying, his mind racing to salvage what was left. The audience stirred, a woman shouting support for Kimmel, breaking the spell, others joining, clapping, a wave of loyalty rising. Trump's smirk faltered, his exit paused, caught off guard by the shift. Kimmel seized it, his voice finding strength, thanking the crowd, saying truth mattered, even if it hurt. The words weren't aimed at Trump, but they landed. The crowd, roaring, Kimmel's stage his again, not won but held, the night bending towards something new. Trump's shadow shrinking, Kimmel's fight alive. The crowd's roar swelled, Kimmel's words about truth igniting a spark, their claps a lifeline pulling him back from the edge. Trump stood frozen, his planned exit stalled, the audience's loyalty to Kimmel a wall he hadn't expected. His smirk was. Hannah's face softened, the victory not his shadow shrinking under the studio's lights. Kimmel stood taller, his voice steady, thanking the crowd again, his gratitude real, raw, the stage his once more, not by force but by heart. He turned to Trump, no venom, just calm, saying the show was about honest talk, not just laughs. The sigh. Words landed soft but strong, a line drawn, the crowd cheering, sensing closure. Trump's eyes flickered, his fire dimming, no comeback ready, his earlier jabs now hollow. He nodded, slight, almost a concession, then walked off, the crowd's noise swallowing his steps, his exit no triumph, just an end. Kimmel watched him go, his chest lighter, the fight over, the night his to close. Back at the desk, Kimmel sat, the energy shifting, the tension gone. He cracked a joke, light, self-deprecating, about surviving tough guests, the crowd laughing, the bond tight. He spoke briefly about Nato, not preaching, just hoping for unity, his tone earnest, human. The audience clapped, warm with him, the divide healed, the show's spirit back. The band kicked in, upbeat, sealing the vibe, Kimmel's grin real. The chaos a memory, strength forged in its wake. As the credits rolled, Kimmel stayed on stage, shaking hands, the crowd buzzing, their respect earned, not given. Backstage, the crew slapped his back. No pity, just pride, the night a story they'd retell. Kimmel exhaled alone later, knowing he'd faced a storm and stood tall, his show tougher than any jab. The audience left smiling, the clash a tale. Of grit not ruin, Kimmel's heart the win, the stage forever his, unbroken alive.